What is up, Undroppables Network? It's the Uncovered series, and we got head-to-head showdown. Raiders at Broncos Sunday. Uh, it's me, Biggs. I'm here with my co-host Raider Damas and our nemesis, Mr. Johnny Tuma. It's at Fantasy Picasso over on the tweet machine, and he is our uncovered Broncos representative. And all you Broncos fans, you know that already. We didn't have an intro video made for this little episode here. Um, uh, do you have a Broncos intro, right?
Oh yeah, baby.
All right. Well, for all you Broncos fans, here you go. You're welcome. All right, and now,
I knew it was going to be a cheap shot somewhere in there.
and now we got. Okay. All right. That'll just about do it. All
Our
right.
car is
So,
much better.
yeah. Um, I mean, not to mention just the fact that we have unlicensed music in the in the intro. All right. I did go. I mean, it's fair use if it's under 20 seconds. And Slayer are huge Raiders fans, so pretty sure there's no real band that's a Broncos fan.
Whoa. What about John Denver, baby?
I'm not sure he'd have much argument considering he's no longer with us.
He was a little bit Rocky Mountain High. That's a weed joke. Fun fact about
He
John
should have stayed on the
Denver.
Rocky Mountain ground. He'd still be alive today.
Heyo.
Ooh.
Uh, fun fact about John Denver: he didn't write Rocky Mountain High, or no, not Rocky Mountain, Country Roads. Take Me Home. He didn't write that song. It was another writer who dated my partner's mom in college and wrote her a song. So whoever wrote that West Virginia song uh, wrote an original song that the lyric sheet is in a frame on my mother-in-law's wall and
Wow.
never to be released or published or anything like that. And it's that dude. All right. Riveting stuff. Okay. So welcome, and let's maybe we want to do this. Let's start with great moments in the rivalry history. Should we go to the circles? Is that cool?
I
How
like
about if
it.
we did this on the? No, I like that on the side better. Whoa, hey,
Throwing up the good stuff.
that's too much.
There we go.
Okay, there we go. All right. So great moments in rivalry history. Both Raiders and Broncos were members of the original AFL that merged with the NFL. Um, and then we got some fun facts. First one in the all time series, the Raiders lead 72-53 and two ties. They have a 575 percentage winning percentage. I don't know what I'm trying to say. And we got our safeties here. Isaiah Polamalu, our homegrown guy, the cousin of Troy Polamalu, and then your Brandon, what's his name? Brandon Jackson, Brandon Jennings, Brandon came over from Miami. Johnny,
Oh, Brandon
it's your
Jones.
safety. Brandon Jones, thank you.
All right.
It's literally your safety, bro.
I wasn't sure if it was PJ Locke. I think the numbers are right there. It's just
And just because the Raiders lead the series, I made Isaiah Polamalu a little bit bigger. I shrunk Brandon Jones down a little bit. All right, all right. So that 72-53 that comes with some baggage, um, especially considering that at one point a few years ago, I'm pretty sure the record was Raiders 64-53. So they were only 9 games above 500 in the series. Except that they are 8-0 since they moved to Vegas. For some reason, the Broncos cannot figure the Raiders out in the rivalry lately. Having been to quite a few Broncos Raiders tilts in Oakland, it's nice to not have to worry whenever we have to play the Broncos. I've seen some games. All right. The Broncos' last win was December 29th, 2019. They won 16-15. Drew Lock was the commander of the Broncos offensive ship. Hunter Renfrow, really the only bright spot in that game. He had a receiving touchdown. The rest was Daniel Carlson field goals. We'll get to that game again. It'll pop up again. Do you have any idea why, Johnny?
No.
All right, well, we'll explain in a second. All right, great moments in rivalry history. In 1977, the Broncos intercepted Ken Stabler 7 times. The Raiders were on a 17-game winning streak, and just absolutely the best team in the NFL. And somehow the Broncos 7 times intercepted and went on to win the game. And I think there was like a playoff spot or something. All right, in 1988, the Broncos were up 24-0 at half. The Raiders came back, scored 27 points in the second half, and then a field goal in overtime to win. It was one of the biggest comebacks in the NFL history at the time, and Marcus Allen led the way with a touchdown for the Raiders. 2018, so we're fast forwarding quite a bit, 20 years. Shaquille Barrett blocks an extra point. Broncos win by a point. That was a Marshawn Lynch touchdown that happened towards the end of the first half, and then he blocked that point, or blocked that extra point try. That was recent history. In 2019, Shelby Harris bats down the Derek Carr 2-point conversion attempt, and the Raiders miss the playoffs. How I'm pretty sure you remember that one. It was only 5 years ago. Johnny, how satisfying is it to win a rivalry game and knock the rival team out of the playoffs?
Yeah, that was good, but that was about all we had to hang our hat on. There's been a rough stretch. All of these, right after 2015, a bunch of games that it feels like this rivalry was really at the peak back when both teams were really good, right? And it was just super bitter. Fans throwing things at the players, stuff like that. Tom Jackson running by the sideline screaming, "It's over, fat man," to John Madden. So I hope we can both get back on track as teams that are, at the top of the conference. And that hate still runs true. And yeah, this was a satisfying moment, but overall, it was probably one of the best moments of that year, which again is not what I think either team would want. I think we're chasing something bigger than that. But yeah, it was nice.
Yeah, I hear a lot from other people that the NFL is better when the Raiders are good. I've never heard anybody say that about the Broncos. The other thing is, I like it better when the two teams are fairly even. If they're both kind of like towards the top of the division, or if they're both mediocre, or if they're both really bad. I don't like it when, for most of my lifetime as a fan, the Broncos have been better than the Raiders. It's just been kind of like intermittently the Raiders. I do want to go back. Let me go back to this game. I remember watching this game. My brother and I were watching it. It was our parents made us go to like a friend's house or something like that, and we were both really pissed because we wanted to watch the Raiders game because they were playing the Broncos. And I remember being down 24-0 and then making a comment or something about, if they scored 24 points in the first half, so can we. And if they didn't allow any points in the first half, we can do the same thing. And then suddenly they're going into overtime, and we were both just kind of excited about it. And as a sports fan, it's the first time I ever had in my mind that no matter how down you are, the script can be flipped. And if somebody scores 24 points in the first half, the other team can do the same damn thing. And then Madden took that to an extreme, and they write that into the code of all their games. So it doesn't matter. You don't have no lead is in Madden is safe. All right. Okay, let's get back to that in a bit. We got comments. Jerry Bagshaw. What's up, Jerry?
Hi
Hi
all.
all. Hi, Jerry. Ooh, I don't like those circles when it's not. Yeah, that looks dumb when it's not formatted. All right. Let's This will be fun because it'll be like 6 of us. Um, all right, let's talk about this week 5 matchup. We got the Broncos at 2-2, uh, tied for second place in the AFC West. We got the Raiders at 2-2, tied for second place in the AFC West. Um, Tell us about tell us about how the season has gone so far for the Broncos, Johnny.
Yeah, thanks, Biggs. Our strength has been our defense. Like, I mean, we got one of the best defenses in the league, and there's no doubt about it. Third in the league in pass defense, only 146 yards a game. So I think that'll be tough sledding with you guys, especially with Devontae Adams not expected to play, and only 55 points allowed through the first 4 weeks. So this is kind of back to that no-fly zone type of. You've got Surtain locking it down. You've got Cooper on the edge with Bonito, providing a constant pass rush. We've had 12 sacks in the past 2 games, 7 against Baker and the Bucks, and 5 against Rodgers. So that's where I'm hanging my hat. If a Broncos fan, the offense has certainly left something to be desired. I think Bo Nix's numbers last week were absolutely abysmal. He had like 60 passing yards and less than 50% completion percentage. But hopefully we all saw that one throw where he put it on a rope about 30 yards down the field in the rain to Cortland Sutton. And so I think there's blips of like, and then the week before that, avoiding the pass rush against the Buccaneers, kind of having eyes in the back of his head and running downfield for 30 yards. Like, you see things to be hopeful about on offense, but overall, I think we're 27th in the league in offense. But doing just enough to win last week against what I think is a good Jets team. And I think, there's some stuff to be excited about if we can put it all together. And in the running game, I see we got a comment. I'm going to throw this one up. Is it Blake Watson time yet? I wish. But a big Blake Watson guy, if you've watched the Broncos Uncovered series, somehow Bidet got on the field first and almost broke his neck.
What an unfortunate name.
Well, and it is Beatty, and it was Beatty, but now he's changed it. And yeah, what a weird thing to change it to. But Javonte Williams and Jaleel McLaughlin did show like a lot better running against the Jets last week. So I think the story I'm trying to paint here, defense has been rock solid. I think you'll see that this weekend again against kind of a suspect Raiders offense and rushing game. And the offense just needs to continue to put it together.
Yeah, suspect is a really good word for it. If I'm looking at the point totals, Raiders are right around. They scored more than the Jets, more than the Steelers, more than the Texans, more than the Titans and Jaguars, more than the Browns, more than the Chargers, more than the Broncos, more than the New York Giants, more than Chicago Bears, more than the Falcons and Panthers, more than the Rams. So their offense is mediocre. Their defense, which is one of the things that we were most excited about coming into the year, on my instant reaction show on Sunday after the win against the Browns, I called them a Jekyll and Hyde team because we've had 4 different games, and from all of the facets of the game, from offense, defense, and special teams, we've had 4 different storylines. It's been 4 different personalities in each aspect of the game throughout the 4 games, which is really baffling because it's like there's no identity there. Who the fuck are you? You know what I mean? Their defense is at times like completely just dominant, and then sometimes they go out and get crushed by Andy Dalton. And it's like really which Raiders team is going to show up. We have Brock Bowers has a huge breakout game and then in a loss and then disappears in a win. So Devontae adds to that. The fact that the offensive line couldn't get going until Jackson Powers Johnson came in against the Browns and started ripping holes open. Zamir White started to look like his old self, and then now apparently he's got a groin issue, and it's questionable whether he's going to even play in the game. Devontae Adams, nobody knows whether it's going to, he's out for the game, but nobody knows if it's actually because of an injury or more because he's disgruntled. Can't get a read on it. We all know as fans that Aiden O'Connell is the quarterback we should be going with, but the coaching staff wants Gardner Minshew in there, and then Gardner Minshew is at times revelatory and at other times complete and total fucking garbage.
Uncle Rico.
So it's like, and then and Crosby being out didn't help. I think the only thing that has been consistent through the 4 games has been the play of Jacorian Bennett and part of the safety unit. And special teams has been fine, but other
and
than
Robert
that,
Spillane.
and the linebacking core.
Is there a better middle linebacker in the NFL right now than Robert Spillane? I'm not sure there's very many, if any.
Fred Warner's got to be in that conversation. He's been balling out too. It's just those snatching interceptions every week. But yes, Spillane's
he's an absolute beast, so I'm not surprised. But Spillane has been on another level, even from what he's shown.
Yeah. So it's like I don't know. The Raiders are 2.5-point dogs going into Denver, but if Denver, they're giving Vegas gives a field goal. Because of home field advantage, so really like it's kind of a pick 'em. It's just so hard to get a read on this team, and I would like one more. I would like one singular Raiders team to show up, and I feel like if we get Aiden O'Connell under center, I think that's what's going to do it.
I got a few questions for you guys I want to unpack based on some of the stuff you said. So Zamir looks bad from my perspective. You said he started putting it together last week, but before that, it was like just rough to watch. And when Madison comes out there, like I faded Madison. I was just like, after last year, I was over it. If you're picking one to roll with, just injury aside with Zamir, what's your thoughts on who's the back you'd want to roll with if you were calling the shots?
Right now, Madison has been performing a lot better. The reason a lot of Raider fans had some trepidation about Madison coming into the season was because when he's been given the ball as the number 1 option, he tends to fumble a lot. But that has not shown up this year. Zamir White has been the one that's been fumbling. Madison has been amazing for us. In fact, he's been one of the very few Raiders who's actually scored multiple touchdowns this season. Zamir White is the kind of guy who needs good blocking ahead of him to be successful. He's not the kind of guy who's going to run into, a close knit group of guys and push his way through to the other side. Madison has more of an ability to do that. So because the blocking has been so awful this year, Madison seems like a better option, but if they fix the offensive line to the point where they can actually run block successfully, I'd like to see Zamir get some more time because I think he can be successful in that kind of situation.
Well, I do want to push back on that a little bit because for the first part of the season, Madison wasn't any more efficient than Zamir White. Both of them were getting absolutely stoned at the line of scrimmage. And in fact, Zamir White had an advantage on Madison in yards before contact. That might have changed I think in this last game, Alexander Madison found a hole and wasn't touched, and went for like a nice 26-yard gain or something like that. But it hasn't been easy for either of them, and then looking kind of like at the stats for this last game against the Browns, Zamir White, except for the fumble, 17 rushes for 50 yards, 2.9 average, not great. And Madison had 60 yards on 5 attempts, but one of those was a 24-yard rush. So really, he had a much better game than White did in this one. One of the things that I noticed in the first 3 games of the season was that the times that Alexander Madison was coming into the game, it was less apparent that the Raiders were running the ball. When the coaching staff comes out and says, "This is our lead back, and we're going to establish the run," what do you think the defense is going to do? So every time you see number 3 out there, put another guy in the box. And then Madison is in the game, and ostensibly that's the third down, like relief back, whatever. The defense drops into nickel, or you know what I mean? So
Yeah.
the efficiency metrics can kind of be skewed based on what the defense is looking at, and especially if the coach speak is, "Hey guys, we're focused on this running back," or is Antonio Pierce smarter than we all think he is, and he did that on purpose so that people would forget about Alexander Madison, because Alexander Madison's been the RB1 all along. Oh my God! Boom!
Yeah, from my side, that's kind of where I'm at. Is like Zamir had the coach speak index going crazy, right? This offseason, as he's the guy, he's going to get 20 touches. It's written in stone. And I've seen a little bit when I watch the games, just trouble with vision with him. Like there will be a hole, but he'll run towards where there isn't a hole.
Yeah.
And so just from an eye test perspective, I think Madison's actually surprised me and looked a little bit more springy than I expected. So I was just curious to hear your thoughts on that. And then another one I want to touch on is underneath your name, you've got Tay for Traylon. Is that a joke, or are we, like, I want to back that a little bit?
Well, it's no secret that I'm a huge Arkansas Razorbacks fan. I'm a huge fan of Treylon Burks. I feel like he got the absolute worst possible case scenario going to Tennessee. He's had no quarterback that could get him the ball. The organization buried him, especially after a coaching change. He's dealt with some like pretty severe injuries that, like he had a terrible quarterback that was leading to hospital balls, and he had a pretty terrible concussion. And then he's also been like used incorrectly. Like the guy is an X receiver that can like run go routes and posts and stuff like that, and he's really good in the open field when he gets the ball. He's also a big body guy that can use his hands. And if we're moving on from Devontae Adams, he would be the perfect foil to running those kind of like downfield intermediate routes from the X, with Trey Tucker taking the top off, Brock Bowers and Jacoby Myers working underneath. I think he would be a really good fit. And if we're moving on from Devontae anyway, we can get somebody like that who has pretty untapped potential, and we get a second rounder out of it.
Yeah, you definitely want more than Treylon, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah. So you're serious.
Yeah, I'm totally serious. I think it would be a perfect change of scenery for him. Also, with the caveat, not with Gardner Minshew throwing the ball. All right, Jamie is patiently waiting for Dylan Laube. We all are. But Jamie, I'm going to have you run to your Google machine and type in this name. Lan, Lan, like a LAN party, but his first name is Lan. Last name is Larison, Larison. Go follow him on Twitter. Also look up his stats. The dude is 2024's version of Dylan Laube. FCS school. He's a threat in the passing game. He's a threat in the run game, and he's absolutely carrying UC Davis right now. They were ranked number 14, just upset number 4 Idaho.
UC Davis plug. I hear you.
Go look up UC Davis legend Lan Larison. All right, now I feel like we've been bamboozled. We got Z Money 15. Can y'all answer a fantasy question? Well, it just so happens that you have two fantasy guys in this show, even though that's not what it's all about. And we'll do it anyway. All right. I traded Achane and Mostert for Puka, Worthy, and Bucky Irving. What do you think? I'm 2-2 in a PPR redraft. In a redraft, I think that's okay. Worthy is a good best ball type pick. He'll have some spike weeks for you. Play the matchups on that. I said from the beginning of the year, he's good for 2 catches a game and possibly a touchdown.
Yeah.
Bucky Irving, that remains to be seen. Rashad White is still the guy. He still has the volume. And I feel like Bucky is kind of this year's Devon Achane, and at some point he's going to get hurt. But I have no problem moving off of Achane and Mostert.
I think he was bragging, dude. I think that's a haul. Like Puka, if he comes back and is productive, that's a good asset.
Yeah.
Worthy with Rice out, and then Bucky has been coming on and getting more and more touches. So, and then the other thing I touched on there is Achane and Mostert, like that running offense isn't what it was last year. Like the blocking in front of them has been tough sledding. Like, so whether it is Mostert or Achane, a lot of running backs are a product of the scheme and the blocking in front of them. And I just have through 4 weeks with that Miami Dolphins rushing attack, I'm just not impressed. So I like it. I don't know if he's just looking for validation, but I think it's a fine trade.
I was giving him validation.
I know. I just wanted to offer.
But it does kind of lead me back to the Zamir White versus Alexander Mattison thing. If we look back on the Netflix series Receiver and the kinds of things that Devontae Adams was talking about, and some of the video that they showed, Jimmy Garoppolo not being able to get the ball to him, like laying him out with hospital balls, things like that. There was also a huge difference in the Vegas run game. If everybody can remember, all the way back to August of 2023, Josh Jacobs was coming off of a 2022 season in which he led the NFL in rushing yards. And in 2023, Jimmy Garoppolo takes over. All of a sudden, Josh Jacobs is seeing stacked boxes, not going anywhere, to the point where he gets hurt. Zamir White comes in with Aiden O'Connell passing the ball, and he's throwing the ball downfield, and they couldn't stack the box anymore. And Zamir White came out and did okay. Well, what do you think is happening with Gardner Minshew and his quarterback? Teams are like, you're not going to beat us downfield. How many balls has Gardner Minshew skipped to his wide receivers in the intermediate because he doesn't have the arm strength to get it down there? And it's a very similar situation to when Garoppolo was playing. The only difference is that Gardner Minshew is more mobile and a better playmaker than Garoppolo was, but that still doesn't help a power run game. And so I feel like Zamir White, last year he averaged 4.6 something yards per carry. I feel like once this offensive line starts to gel, because there's some new personnel going on, and once they get an open field throwing 300 yards in a game, the defense won't have to focus on the run game so much, and that'll open things up for both Zamir White and Alexander Mattison. We all know from our Pop Warner days that the proper way to hold a football is with your hand under your chin and the ball tucked into your bicep, and then cover it with your other hand if you need to, but as you're running down the field, you keep it here, right in the center of your body. Zamir White needs to do a better job of that, especially when he's going to be getting contact. That's when you cover up the other side so it doesn't get punched out. I saw him do that. I want to say it was either week 2 or week 3. He had a fumble in week 1 or 2. It was the following week that he actually covered up and people were trying to punch it out, and he was holding it properly. And then in the scrum this last Sunday, he lost another one. So and lost some reps. So I still feel like Zamir White is the better back on this team, but Antonio Pierce has come out in the last week and a half and been like, nobody's job is safe. We're going to be like trying everybody and then running with the hot hands. And if that just so happens to be Alexander Madison at this point, then so be it. I don't want to think about the fantasy implications, but as long as my team wins, I'm okay with whatever happens. So if that's how they feel going forward, then that's fine with me.
Yeah. It's a lot of good points. And I think to your point about if you don't respect the pass, it's easy to really double down on the run and kind of circling back on. I know this isn't about the Dolphins, but that's, Tua goes down and that run game gets that much harder to be successful because nobody's scared of someone like Tyler Huntley at this point, right? 2 weeks off the practice squad. So one other thing I want to say, if you are a Raiders fan and you have not seen that wide receiver series, I mean, I guess he's going to be gone. But goodness gravy, man, I am such a big Davante Adams fan. And like, there's just, Debo gets a little nick and a scratch and he's on the sideline. Like this dude, Davante Adams is getting shots of some shit to play through the pain. Like that dude is a dog. Yeah. And so I want to touch on this a bit with you guys because it really surprises me that he's like pulling this shit right now with the hamstring and he's clearly disgruntled. And like, I love Antonio Pierce, like the mentality, the kind of Raider vibe he brings. And if I were to look at and watch that show and then think about how Antonio Pierce communicates to the media, at least, and what we know as fans, I think those two guys would be best, like thick as thieves, right? So give me the short and skinny on this, because I'm sure you could probably give me a long version, but like, what's going on with Adams? Why do you think he's disgruntled?
Well, I have one theory, but I'm going to let Raider Damas lead off on this one.
All right. The first thing is that it came out today that the Raiders have been telling teams interested in trading for Davante that the hamstring injury is in fact real, and he's probably not going to be able to play for another 1 or 2 weeks even if he's traded today. They wanted to warn other teams of that. So I don't think he's missing time because he's disgruntled. I think he's actually legit hurt. But the reason that he wants out is because a couple of years ago, football terrorist Josh McDaniels decided to get rid of his best friend Derek Carr, who was the only reason Davante wanted to play for the Raiders in the first place, was because he wanted to play with his very good friend. Well, other than it's the Raiders and everybody wants to play for the Raiders, and he grew up in Palo Alto and was a Raiders fan growing up, and and all that great stuff. But Derek Carr is a very, very close friend of Davante Adams. Yeah. And so when he got the rug pulled out from underneath him, and all of a sudden he's given in succession Jimmy Garoppolo, Aiden O'Connell, and Gardner Minshew to throw the ball to him, that's organizational malpractice. Davante Adams is absolutely right in wanting out of town right now because of what was promised him. You're going to play with Derek Carr, and then all of a sudden you're not going to play with Derek Carr anymore. And here we're going to give you these 3 scrubs to throw you the ball. I don't have a problem at all with what Davante Adams is doing, trying to get his way out of town. He was lied to by the Raiders. He was bamboozled, and he deserves to be in a situation he's happy with.
Great analysis, dude.
The only thing I have to add to that is that also throughout that receiver series and this offseason and during the quarterback battle, Adams made it clear that Aiden O'Connell is his choice as quarterback on this team. And I feel like he felt like the organization disrespected him again.
Yeah.
Now, the hamstring injury, the thing that makes me feel like it's legitimate is the fact that it happened towards the end of an actual practice. Instead of him last Thursday going out and saying, I don't want to practice because he's upset, and then missing practice, he actually left the practice with an injury.
Right.
So I think that's the biggest factor. All right, we got, where does Adams land if he gets his trade? I think the smart money is on the teams that can afford to cover him with their salary cap right now. So I don't know. I think that there's a list of like 5 teams, including Seattle. I'd love to see him, for fantasy purposes, I'd love to see him go to San Francisco, just because I feel like with the uncertainty of Debo and Brandon Ayuk every week, I feel like Davante Adams is going to be like a reliable choice. And then of course New York is probably, if you polled 10,000 football fans, I'm sure the majority would say New York.
Well, yeah. And to Raider Dominus' point, he made it known he wants to play for either the Jets or the Saints. And it's just a direct acknowledgement of like, I care who my quarterback is, right? I want someone throwing the ball I can trust. So those are definitely contenders. And I could see it with both of those teams in terms of how they'd fit. And I know they would never do it. But God, I'd love to have him, man. As a Broncos fan, we could use him as like so bad, in terms of helping elevate a rookie quarterback and having what I think is like, I've never been sold on Sutton ever since some of the big injuries he came back from, and looks about like 80 to 90% of what he was coming out of SMU. So to have a guy like a Hall of Famer like Adams, I would die for someone like him. So.
Yeah, I don't think there's a team in the NFL that couldn't use Davante Adams. As far as the Saints go, though, I mean, they do some salary cap magic every single year because they're always up against it, and they're always like over it, in fact. And yet still every year they can afford their teams. So, I'm not sure what accounting wizardry they'd have to do to acquire Adams, but I'm sure they're trying right now.
Yeah,
I'd flip as soon as Kendre Miller comes back healthy, and I'm the Saints. I'd flip Alvin Kamara to the Raiders for Davante Adams in a heartbeat. And if I'm the Raiders, I'd do that same thing too. All right, Jamie, we'll get to your question in a second. But your comment I want to touch on. Chiefs could use Adams right now, but they won't pay him. I think the Chiefs are the perfect landing spot for him, just because they're going to win the fucking Super Bowl anyway, so they may as well do it with an wide receiver. And then we don't have to worry about it anymore.
But do you guys think that they would trade him in the division? Because I think that's the hang up.
No.
That's what I'm saying. I think that's not realistic, right?
No.
Yeah.
All right, let's talk about this last game because it kind of feeds into what we were talking about with the run game. I don't understand how, with the shutdown of what were the Jets thinking, allowing Javonte Williams and Jaleel McLaughlin to rush for 123 yards combined when Bo Nix was absolutely atrocious, under 50% completion percentage, 60 yards total in passing, 2.4 yards average per completion. He lucked out on a Cortland. I don't know what happened. Sauce wasn't guarding him, or the defensive back fell down, or something that allowed Cortland Sutton to get behind. But I'm looking at the box score and I'm running down the Denver receiving. Cortland Sutton had 3 catches on 9 targets. That's fucking awful. And then we got Michael Burton, Javonte Williams, Josh Reynolds, Lil Jordan Humphrey, Greg Dulcich, Nate Adkins, Jaleel McLaughlin, Troy Franklin, and Tyler Beatty with 9 total catches for 0 yards.
I've got negative 6.
Because
of Michael Burton. Okay, yeah, you're adding. Yeah. Okay.
All right, and that kind of leads me to Jamie's question. Oh, Jamie, come on. My dog started barking. Is that my ex-wife in the background? Fantastic. All right. It leads to Jamie's question. What the heck is wrong with Marvin Mims? Why can't he get more than 1 target? Is he just that bad?
Can I take this?
Yeah, it's for you.
I think he's a hell of an athlete. He clearly separates. If you know Sean Payton, it's just got to be about knowing the playbook, knowing the verbiage. So the playbook and the verbiage is incredibly complex. And I think that's something we need to get better. Like, we need to simplify the offense a lot for the younger players. And again, things like run blocking also matter. And he also likes those 6'3" builds. Like, he likes the Devon Baileys, the Lil Jordan Humphreys. These guys all bring size so that they can block on the outside. And I think those are the things where we haven't ever heard him acknowledge it, because when they ask him about Marvin Mims, he says, yeah, we need to get him more involved. Why does it not happen? I'm going back to those 2 things around knowing the verbiage and playbook and being dependable for Peyton, and then being a reliable run blocker. And I'll just close the loop. How fun of a name is Lil Jordan Humphrey? I mean,
yeah, it's one of my favorite names in the NFL.
I keep waiting for Big Jordan to show up, but he never does.
He's not little, right? He's like 6'4". Like, it's just like it's so great.
Yeah, I do want to see Big Jordan in the stands. What happened? So Marvin Mims came out of the gate last year, and he was fantastic. He was a deep threat. He's very fast. He's good as a punt returner. He has a good like missed forced tackles per reception rate when he actually gets the ball. Is it just a matter of the quarterbacking? Because as soon as they started targeting him with underneath routes and little screens and stuff, they just kept wasting him last year when Russell Wilson was the quarterback. And it was like every time I saw his name called, he's like catching a ball at the line of scrimmage. The first 2 games, he was catching the ball downfield. Why did they change his route tree? And is it just a matter of like and Bo Nix can't get him the ball either?
Yeah.
Is that the case?
Your guess is as good as mine, but I
Okay.
think to your point, he excels in that flagrant role, stretching the ball downfield. And I thought it was interesting to go trade up and get a guy like Troy Franklin, who maybe kind of has a similar archetype of like, I don't think you want to use those guys for screens. You want to kind of stretch the field with those guys. And it was, they always talk about who was the first draft pick. I don't know if this is the case. The first draft pick that Sean Payton made as a Bronco was Marvin Mims. But
yeah, he traded up for him.
Right, but I wanted to say their first draft pick that he made, this can't be the case, was Brandon Cooks or something like that. That I don't think that's right. But the point being, like, I think a lot of people saw the similarities in the speed, how they could be used, how they could excel in that offense. And Russell Wilson, gosh, man, he's a goofball to me at least. But I think he would have had a better chance of pushing the ball downfield consistently. And that's kind of the thing about Nix that was a big red flag with me was, the completion percentage was high coming out of college, but the average depth of target and stuff like that is just not what you want it to be, right? And so I don't know if that skill set necessarily meshes with Marvin Mims. So I don't have like a good answer for, it's going to get better for you guys in 2 weeks. Like every episode that I'm on Broncos Uncovered, people are asking about this guy, telling me they, traded for him at a premium and they're bad. Right. Their shares are crumbling. And I'm just like, dude, I don't think like it's going to necessarily change next week. He seems to really like this 7th rounder, Devon Vele. He was a healthy scratch. I think last week and missed the week before with a rib injury or something like. He's been a little bit, but the first week he had like 8 targets. Or maybe 8 catches on 11 targets, something like that. And so he likes those tall guys. And I just don't think I think Marvin Mims is in the doghouse.
Yeah, that's what it seems like.
Can I address this whole concept for a second? Because it goes well beyond Marvin Mims or any particular wide receiver you may name. Passing yardage and completion percentage is down across the board in the NFL this year. And that's no secret. And the reason for that is because teams feel like they can get to the quarterback with a 4-man rush because their defensive ends are absolute monsters. So what they do is they put 7 men back in coverage and they rush with 4. The reason they're able to do that is because the defensive ends and edge rushers in the NFL are getting bigger, faster, stronger every single year. And offensive line talent is falling by the wayside. And it has been doing so for several years in succession. Offensive linemen are extremely hard to find. Their talent level has been going down for decades now because of concussions and because of 7-on-7 football becoming popular in the high school ranks. You're just not getting those blue chip offensive linemen into college anymore at the rate that you used to. However, you are getting even more instances of freak defensive ends and outside linebackers who are able to rush the passer incredibly effectively. So there's no reason whatsoever that you need your linebackers rushing the passer and having 4 or 5 guys back in coverage. So it does not behoove teams to have deep passing routes as the basis for their offense anymore. It certainly does behoove them to have a lot of screens. And a lot of those even aren't getting completed because corners are getting a lot better these days as well. So I just think passing is down, rushing is up, rushing the passer is up, and it's making for a very, very different product than we saw in 2005 to 2012. It's not the same game anymore, just like it's not the same game as when Larry Zonka was running wild. Things change, things evolve, and this is what we're seeing right now.
Yeah, great points. Great points.
Yeah, and shout out Hoove at HooveTube, by the way. I don't know. I just think that every time somebody says behoove, I think of Hoove. What's up, Hoove? All right. I want to ask a question about this vaunted Denver rushing attack. So week one, Javonte was averaging 2.9 yards per carry, and Jaleel McLaughlin 2.7 yards per carry. Their efficiency numbers even went down in week 2 and week 3, and then they kind of had a breakout against the Jets. So, like, looking at the Jets real quick, they've averaged basically their rushing average yards against has been roughly even. They've allowed 7 yards per game over average. The Raiders' defense is 0. They're the only team that are absolutely average. So you would think that they're at this point, and obviously opponents has to be taken into context at this point in the season. But what did you notice anything differently in the Broncos running game aside from just trying to attribute it to the New York Jets run defense? Because it's obvious that the Jets had the pass game on lockdown. They couldn't do anything, and so they obviously weren't as focused on the run game as they could, whereas maybe Seattle was a little bit more focused than the Jets were. The Raiders have been trying their best to stop the run, and they've been absolutely league average at it. So what did you notice this last Sunday against the Jets? And then we'll get into like what we think as far as our predictions for this week.
So I'll say that I think the field conditions played a role, like that in the passing game. That Jets and Broncos game, it was slippery, it was rainy, and sometimes that helps the runners, sometimes it hurts the runners, right? But in this particular instance, I think that they were also trying to lick their chops and get after Knicks a lot, and which is, to your point, silly, because it's like, hey guys, let's stack the box, let's make this guy beat us. And I honestly think some of the coaching calls there were a little suspect in terms of how much it seemed like they had a focus on trying to stop the pass. And, if you go back to like how badly the 49ers ran all over that Jets defense when they played each other, I think that there's something to be said about that's such a good defense on paper, but one that clearly has some schematic issues and maybe not coached properly. So, I'd love to say the runners look better. I do think the blocking up front looked better. I think the guys were doing a bit better job creating holes, putting a hat on a hat, as they say, right? But people always tout Javonte Williams as like a very special running back. I really haven't been blown away so far. I mean, there was one play, I don't know if you guys saw it, he carried Sauce Gardner about 7 or 8 yards, which was really cool. So he still shows some power, but I don't see a ton of like burst and speed from him. So back to the earlier quote about Blake Watson, like I think it would be really fun to get a guy like him more involved on some outside runs. And, I think that's what they brought in Bidet to do before he left the game with that injury. And again, just in typical Sean Payton fashion, everybody wants Blake Watson to see the field. And he's like, no, let's get this guy Bidet some touches, right? And he looked really good the week prior in limited action against the Buccaneers because I think he brings that different speed element. I like McLaughlin a lot, like going into the season, but I think he's just, I hate to just say, oh, he's so undersized because it just sounds like kind of a typical cop out. But I mean, this guy gets rocked sometimes, and he just looks like a kid playing amongst like men sometimes, you know,
Kind of like Deuce Vaughn.
Yeah, exactly. Like you love him at Kent State, awesome, or Kansas State, like awesome stuff. But then you see him in the NFL, and you're like, this just might not work, bro. You know, and so I think there's something to be desired in the run game still, even after a good week on paper. So that's just my my analysis.
I think Robert Saleh is he might be in that conversation with like Wade Phillips, you know, and Norv Turner, guys who are really good coordinators but below average head coaches. Yeah, probably should have stayed where he was. I don't think things are working out for the Jets. I haven't seen anything from them under Saleh that says he's going to be good or better. They should probably get move on from him sooner than later. But he's an amazing defensive coordinator. You know, and I'm afraid that the Raiders' current defensive coordinator might be in the same boat, although he's never been given a chance as a head coach. But he's such a good defensive coordinator, and I feel for him if he moves on and fails, because he's so liked by the players. But that is a thing that happens. Guys get in their groove, and then, you know, the Peter principle, you're promoted to your level of incompetence. That happens in football all the time. Especially with superstar offensive and defensive coordinators that become head coaches and they absolutely flame out. Happens all the time. And it's sad, but when you have a guy like Sean McVay, who clearly is not an example of that, you want to hold on to guys like that.
Yeah. Completely agree.
Yeah. All right. So what do we think is going to happen this week? Again, we've got the Broncos hosting the Raiders. We've kind of trod over each team's offense. We haven't really talked a whole lot about defenses, but I feel like we're going to do that in our predictions. Let's go with Johnny. Johnny, what do you think? How do you think the game script is going to go, and what's your prediction on the final score?
Yeah, so it's going to be an ugly game, right? Like it'll be a good game because it'll be tight, I think, but it'll be sloppy. To your point, there will be some passes in the dirt from Minshew, some fumbles on both sides. I have of course, I got to pick my team, right? And I wouldn't fault you guys for doing the same. I have 19-16 Broncos because that's an ugly score. We're going to have one touchdown, possibly on defense, and then 4 field goals to get to 19 points. And then you guys are going to have one touchdown and 3 field goals to get to 16 points. And again, this reminds me of like when you were watching the Seahawks and the Lions last week. There's going to be games like that going on, and we're going to be more like the Titans and the Dolphins. But I got my team winning in one of those games.
This is not going to be Alabama, Georgia. This is going to be like Iowa versus Purdue.
Yeah.
All right, Raider Thomas, what is your take?
Well, the over-under on this game for total points is, as I recall, 36, which is one of the lowest numbers for a total that I've seen in many, many years. There's a reason I mentioned Iowa, and I think 36 might be the number of punts in this game, the number of points in this game. This game is going to be an absolute shit show. It's going to be absurd. Make sure you bring a lot of alcohol if you want to watch this game because you're going to need it. I do think the Raiders offense is a little bit better than the Broncos offense. I think their defenses, the Broncos might have a slightly better defense than the Raiders, but it depends almost entirely on if Max Crosby plays in it and what level he plays. If he plays at his normal elite level, then I give the Raiders the edge there. And Ja'Cory Bennett is playing at a super high level. Isaiah Polamau is missing practice this week because his wife is having a baby, so happy trails to him. I hope we see him sooner than later on the field. I just think the Raiders are a better team than the Broncos for a variety of reasons. But I do think this will be a super low-scoring game. I see this as 19-10 Raiders.
So looking at both of the teams last week, Somehow the Broncos allowed 184 yards passing and only 64 yards on the ground, and I think that speaks to more to Nathaniel Hackett's game plan than it does to actually what the Broncos are good at on defense. I feel like they're better in the passing game in pass defense than they are in the run game. On the other hand, you have Vegas rushing for 152 yards last week against the Cleveland Browns. And if that is the run game that gets going, I feel like it's going to be a head-to-head battle of run games. But I feel like Gardner Minshew just has a little bit more up his sleeve in case of like a negative game script, in case of like a later game kind of comeback. I feel like you guys are right in that it's going to be kind of like a slow-paced game. It's not going to be fun to watch by any stretch of the imagination. I did call out on the show. I feel like the final score is going to be 24-14 Raiders. And I'm going to stick with that. I just think that if the Raiders have shown us something in this run game that ran for 152 yards and 5.2 yards per carry average against the Browns, I feel like they're going to be able to do that against the Broncos with a little bit of trickeration thrown in. I know that the Broncos have a vastly superior pass defense than the Raiders do. But I also, if I had to hand the ball to a quarterback to come out of the second half and say, go win us a ball game, I'm giving it to Gardner Minshew and not Bo Nix.
Whoa. All right. Well, I know we got to run if you're on the undroppable.
Well, no, there was one more segment.
Oh, well, you got to run.
I don't have to go anywhere.
Well, the playbook starts in 3 minutes for.
Okay. Let's get through this.
I know you saw me pulling this up in the background. If we wouldn't have talked about the chains getting snatched, I think he snatched his chain 2 times. My boy Aqib Talib.
Yeah. Well, the first one was in 2016. We had Talib versus Crabtree round 1, the chain snatch. But the 1994 playoffs, Tim Brown versus Tyrone Braxton, they got into it. These teams like to fight. I mean, when you see each other twice a year at least, and sometimes 3 if you see each other in the playoffs, which has only happened, I think, 2 times, it can get heated. So then we have 2016 Talib versus Crabtree. For some reason, Talib just wanted to snatch that chain away from Crabtree, and he did. And you could see Crabtree just kind of like, I'll get my revenge at some point. And then the following year, they played each other even earlier in the season, but Crabtree didn't do anything. And then as soon as they're on home turf in Oakland, here comes Crabtree. I even got a video of it. Oh, let's get that. Let's see how that all went down, shall we?
Garrett Bowles and Max Crosby, 2 chippiest players on each side. That's who I got.
On there, 8. Okay, so we had
he's snatching. He's going for the chain the whole time.
He takes the chain again, right? All right, so Marshawn Lynch takes the handoff on a 2nd and 6 play. Comes up through the line, almost gets the first down. It's going to be 3rd and 1. But what's going on the side of the field? The flags start getting thrown. What's going on? Well, it looks like Crabtree has fully gone after in his his run block assignment. Totally going after Talib. They start scrapping. They fall to the ground. The benches are clearing. The helmets are getting thrown. Flags are flying. It's chaos in Oakland. And here we go. We get Crabtree gets his helmet torn out. Here's another flag. What are you throwing a flag there for? Crabtree's walking around. He's like, where is Talib? Give me Talib. I want him. He's a coward. He's a bitch. Here we go. I'm going to take a swing. Woo! And he gets out up, and then we're gonna hold me back. Somebody hold me back. All right.
So good, dude. Last thing I'll say, Talib didn't even care about the fighting. You just see him in that video. He's reaching for the chain again.
I think we've left out the most important moment ever in Raiders and Broncos history, which is when Pete Rozelle, rest in peace, personally vetoed a trade in 1982 with the Chicago Bears and the Indianapolis Colts, which would have gotten the Raiders John Elway. Now, the Raiders had a revolving door of quarterbacks in the late 80s and early 90s. With John Elway, they would have won 7 Super Bowls, and they'd be the greatest team of all time, and the Broncos would be in the Big 12 right now.
Johnny, Sunday after the game, if the Raiders win, come on my instant reaction show.
No.
All right, thank you guys for watching. We are out of here. You got another show coming up next. Make sure to watch it.
See y'all.